When we talk about knife skills in relation to forest school and bushcraft and outdoor learning, we're usually talking about using a standard bushcraft knife to carve tent pegs, to make little whittled elder wands and whistles and all that fantastic stuff. But I feel one of the areas that is really undeveloped when it comes to knife skills in general is being able to use a cooking knife and talking about the preparation of food and veg. This is something that I realized that I was kind of slipping on, that I spent so much time thinking about how to teach knife skills safely and effectively when we're using a bushcraft knife, so when you're whittling a stick, but then a lot of that goes out of the window when you need to prepare, say, vegetables or fruit for a recipe, or to do some cooking with the children. Even though we can argue that a lot of the skills that we teach in forest school are life skills, being able to use a cooking knife and prepare food with it is most definitely a life skill. We talk a lot about healthy eating in schools and outside of schools and in our everyday lives, but sometimes people are just lacking the practical skills. So I thought we'd just spend today's video talking a little bit about developing the cooking knife skills within a forest school setting. I'm a big believer in the right tool for the right job, and in my mind the standard bushcraft Mora knives are just not quite the right tool for chopping vegetables. They tend to be made out of thicker metal, and that means that they are slightly harder to get through and slice through things, which is fantastic if you're looking to batten wood, or you're looking to put a lot of pressure on it to be able to carve a stick into a point. I think for cooking tasks you need standard cooking knives. Obviously there are many different options on the market, but I've recently picked up a pair of these Xylus, a couple of these Xylus cooking knives. Now what I like about these is, first of all, they come with a sheath. You can get aftermarket sheaths for a lot of common knives. You can search like paring knife sheath and you can find one that works, but it's nice just to have ones that come with the knife and are custom fitted. So this means that I can carry them around safely, and it means that when we're doing talks and instructing, we can have knives put away in sheaths and they can be safe. So having a sheath is a good bonus. Then in terms of size, you definitely don't want to, unless you're working with adult participants or teenagers, to get the great big full-size knives straight away. This is probably as big as I'd go, so this is a sort of small chef's knife size, and it has a standard flat blade. So that's a nice size for slightly older children for chopping slightly bigger vegetables and fruit. Then you have more paring knife size, and these might be more appropriate for children. So there's usually two different types of paring knives you can find. You'll either get a serrated edge or a standard edge. Now, which one you choose does depend a little bit on the ages and abilities of the learners. When people first start out using knives to chop vegetables, they will tend to try and muscle through. They'll tend to try and push their way through as opposed to slice their way through. And that is something that we're trying to develop, trying to get them out of the habit of, and develop a better slicing technique. The serrated knives are good for when you start developing that sawing technique. They are in some ways a lot safer because the potential for serious injury is a little bit less because it's not smooth. So the serrations will stop the cut before it goes too far. But they do require a bit more of a sawing motion to use, which can be a struggle for young children. So I use a variety, but I do like these standard edges rather than the serrated edges for cooking knives. Then the only other things you'll need besides things to chop is a nice solid chopping board. Put a tea towel or a grippy rubber mat underneath this to give you a stable surface, and then you'll typically also want a table that is the appropriate height for the children you're working with. You can make do with stumps and planks and things, but I feel like this is a reason to use a good table. I do have a review to a high gear table that I do recommend quite thoroughly. Once you've got all of the equipment you need, now is the time to talk about your technique. So the main injury areas for using a knife to chop vegetables and fruit is going to be to the top edge of our fingers. So in general, we don't want to hold any sort of vegetables with our fingers splayed along the edge of the vegetable. That is just a recipe for disaster. So whenever we're looking at techniques, we're looking to minimize the danger to these tips of fingers by getting them out of the way. Similar to the way we do with knife skills, we say don't cut towards yourself, and we talk about keeping away from other areas like your legs. Luckily with this, with a table or something, the knife is in general further away from legs, and we also have a standard chopping area. So as long as we space the chopping boards out enough, there shouldn't be an issue about blood bubbles either. Which is, for those who don't know, blood bubble is making sure to keep the space around you, kind of knife's breadth away from you clear so that nobody else is in any danger. But as I said, if we have everything laid out here, and as long as we say don't leave the cutting area with your knife, we are already pretty safe. We have set up the environment for safety. And the first grip that you want to teach them is the cat's paw. So if we take our fingers and if we curl them underneath, we've immediately reduced the chance of cutting those appendixes. Then bringing our cat's paw down to rest, we can dig in our fingernails slightly, and we've created a firm hold on our food item. First step is to get that kind of that cat's paw grip. Teach that a couple of times, get everyone to demonstrate it properly, and then when we actually cut something, we're going to try and keep our knife as close to that while still keeping our fingers tucked in. Now, you can also encourage a little bit of distance, but a good proper chef's technique is to have it sliding along the front of those knuckles, because that means that we always know where our fingers are and we always know where the knife is. And because the knife isn't moving around backwards and forwards, it is relatively safer. But if all you can manage is to get them to keep their fingers tucked underneath and slice some distance away, that's good. Then, of course, when you are first teaching this, it's best to start with softer vegetables first. So pick something that will slice easily and that doesn't require a lot of pressure. I've found courgettes quite good because even with only a small amount of pressure, you can get a good slice. So the way you teach it is cat's paw on top and then just smooth slices way through. If you can, rest it right up against those knuckles, Yeah, and then you're always moving back or sliding or using your thumb to push forward. But for a start, I'd suggest moving your hands back a little bit, so all into the right place. There we go. Once you've built a whole lot of confidence with courgettes and celery and all those softer stick-like vegetables, carrots are a good bit. They are a little bit trickier. You do need to use a bit more force, and this is where we can start teaching that kind of slicing movement. So rather than just trying to push through, which would work, and it's not a terrible technique, try and get moving forward and back just a little bit. Sometimes that pull back is a better one. I try not to pull back too far so that we come back and move under the hand there. So just smooth slices. Sometimes a push forward is quite good. It's whatever they feel comfortable with. I'm going to see if I can get these a little bit thinner. Again, just resting my hand on top, fingers curled underneath. Once we've got our easy stick vegetables out of the way, we can start looking at slightly more complicated vegetables, such as bell peppers. Again, these are quite soft, so you can slice them relatively easily. So we're going to start off with just cat's paw again. There you go, slice away from your hand, down at an angle, taking the corners off. And then you can tilt it over, get that last little bit. Then we go back to our slices. You can see it's relatively easy. Now with bell peppers, it's well worth having the inside upwards, because the slightly waxy outer, if your knives aren't perfectly sharp, they tend to slide around a bit more. Now this is really important that you keep your knives sharp for vegetables like these, so as they have that waxy skin, they'll cause you some problems. Especially cause the children some problems. Other interesting things you can get, green beans. These can be quite fun to practice on. Even younger ones that struggle with the amount of force to get through a courgette can get through these quite quickly. Then as people get more confident, you can try and cut several at once. Get that rocking motion. Just press down. So when we get to the point when the children you're working with are comfortable with using the cat's paw method of chopping and slicing, then they'll typically come across something smaller like an apple or a tomato. Now the problem is there isn't very much to hold on to. You can see that we would quickly get ourselves into trouble if we were trying to hold it on top. We can still slice quite well, but what if we want to slice it into quarters or into wedges? Then we have a slightly different technique. So we're placing our fingers over the top of our tomato there, so that we can come into the center. So we can put a knife on top, bring our fingers over the top, so holding either side. As long as we're slicing downwards, we are still slicing away from our fingers. And as long as we saw a little bit, go straight down. You can turn it around, knife in, and slice down. And then we have another opportunity to do that, so we're going to hold either side there and just slice across. This requires a little bit more skill, but it does help with smaller things, and becomes particularly useful when we move on to our next challenge, which is an onion. Onions are tricky at the best of times, even for experienced knife users. So what we're looking to do first is cut the top of the stem. So we're going cat's paw, and then we're going to just cut the top off there. That will then give us a flat area. It'll stop it from moving around, and we can use our over the top grip, the knife on top, hands over the top, and we can cut down, and we've got our halves. Now to dice it, it's generally a little bit more tricky. At this point, if there's any peel that still needs to come off, you can take that off. Dicing is a little trickier, so we'll just slice it. So we go cat's paw, as long as the knives are sharp, you can get through relatively easy. So just thinking about that smooth slicing motion, pulling back. Yep, and then that can go in the pot. Now this all works quite well. A lot of those were relatively easy to chop. When you get to something a bit more tricky, like a potato or sweet potato, which are firmer, Swedes and butternut also fit into this category, where to cut them requires quite a bit more force. And that's where we're going to look at our third technique. So we had our cat's paw, we had our over the top kind of lobster hold, and then now we have the power push. So we press our knife down a little bit, and then we can put our other hand over the top on the back of the knife. You see fingertips are up and away, and then I'm just going to rock backwards and forwards and push down. I use a bit of my body weight, lean over it, and go all the way through. That way my fingers are always away from the path of the knife. So open it up. This might be one that you need to teach a little bit earlier with children that don't have the physical strength to get through something like a carrot. But we want to rest it lightly on there so it bites in a little bit, and then we just rock backwards and forwards, slice our way through. Rock, and then you can see, and then we can go back to our cat's paw slice. Well, there we go. I hope those 3 techniques and a couple of different ways of chopping common vegetables is helpful for you. I encourage you to grab some vegetables you have at home, take a look at it, see how you would chop it if you were introducing it to someone entirely new to it, and how would you position the knife and your hands to reduce the amount of risk to those fingertips. If you would like ideas on what to do with your big bowl of chopped vegetables, then stay tuned for my next video, and I'm going to show you a quick and easy recipe on where we can use chopped vegetables. But I'd really encourage you to start developing those knife skills with your groups. It opens a window up to so many different possibilities, and as I said, it's such a valuable life skill. Thank you so much for watching. Remember to make the most of every day, and I'll see you all next time.